podcast. I'm Isabelle Bräutigam, Director of Sales and Marketing at Custom Built Design and Remodeling, and today I am joined by Michael Flory, founder, CEO, and my dad. And we have got a fun topic that we're going to dive into today, and it is, can family and business actually mix? And we're here today, so the obvious answer is yes, but let's pull back the curtain a little bit and just talk about some of the, joys in it and some of the deep challenges and just how you can make it work in a healthy way.
Yeah. We're here, we're in business together, definitely family and business can mix. And I think it can be a really challenging thing. And I think it can also be a very rewarding thing.
Yeah. So you obviously are working with me, Aiden, your son's in the business as a managing lead carpenter. A few of the other kids are as well. You've also worked with your brother.
Yep.
And have you worked with any other family members?
Mom.
Oh yeah, that's true, Mom.
Yeah.
Yep. So just give a little bit of background and journey on maybe each of those relationships. And
so we've evolved a lot. I've been in business for a long time. So as you grow, things change. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the challenge with family business. One of the key challenges is that when things change and they weren't what you originally, and they're never going to stay the same, it's always going to change. The business and my ability as a business owner, my ability to have, the forethought and how this is all going to work, needs to be in a way that it remains flexible. And there's, clear boundaries, I guess, that can allow you to shift and move if things need to happen.
Yeah. And kind of elephant in the room. This is a deep topic to talk about, right?
Yeah.
This is a challenging topic to dive into, and there's not the right way to say things, and so this is raw and real, you and I having a conversation. I think that's really important for this because we're going to talk about things that are just really real.
Right.
So I think to kick it off, let's talk a little bit about your and I's relationship.
Yeah.
We've worked together for full time now, 6 years. Mm-hmm. And then prior to that, I worked part-time in the business. And in high school, I remember the end of maybe middle of my senior year, I worked part-time and I was doing office stuff. And I just thought, I was like, I never want to work in this business. It was so dynamic. Your and I's relationship wasn't the best at the time. I'm graduating high school and leaving. You're busy in the business, and it was hard,
Yeah.
It was hard for us to connect, and we didn't have a ton of overlap and interaction, but when we did, it wasn't always it wasn't always our shining moments, I would say, in both of our ends.
Yeah.
And so I originally thought, I don't really want to work with family. I think there's a lot of strings attached. Mm-hmm. That's a big thing, Not only do you know me as Isabelle, Director of Sales and Marketing, but you know me as Isabelle, your daughter, as Isabelle, friend, sister.
Yeah.
All parts of me. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to be really careful to work to bring the best out in each other and to bring your best to the table.
Yeah.
Even more so when you're in family business.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I think that we've talked about recently is that, when we're all evolving. This is the way I like to think about life, is that we're evolving as people on this earth. I've been around this sun 50 times now. Mm-hmm. The first 5 you don't really remember, right? So 45 trips around the sun, and 5 to about 25, your brain's still developing, right? You're changing fast. And then depending on what happened from 0 to 25, there's all kinds of things that may have happened to you as a kid. And then throughout life, depending on your passions and love, mine has been to, when you boil down to custom built, what is our passion? We like to impact families. Well, the funny thing about family business is it's typically the people that are closest to you that get to feel the full wrath of your, let's call it your shadow behavior. We talk about best self and shadow. This is a really fun topic. We'll have to bring Cassie on sometime and talk about this, but there's a print assessment, very similar to Enneagram, but it's a tool that Strategic Coach uses. So it's an amazing tool, but it helps you see your best self and your shadow. And your best self are like traits that you bring to the table. Like some of mine be like charismatic or good leader or passionate. Risk taker, things like that. Some things that might be on my shadow are like controlling, bossy, impatient, but over here it's like fast thinker, fast mover.
Right.
So I mean, for me, just being really vulnerable, like when you work that closely with somebody that you already love, or you have history and baggage with, like all of it comes to the table in the midst of business, because business is like when you own the business and you're relying on the business, there's just so many more emotions that get brought into the equation, and as the owner, everything that happens in the business is really a reflection of me. So when things don't go well, it's a reflection of me, and that's something that as you been in business long enough and you start maturing in business and you start maturing as a human and you start healing, from some of your childhood stuff, you get to start doing and seeing this stuff, but you don't have to. But in my case, like I'm a forever learner. I'm not ever going to stop growing. I'm not going to stop growing for the rest of my life. Like, and my heart is to love people. My heart is to serve people. And a lot of days I don't do that.
Yeah. And you and I talk a lot about the business will only go as far as you are willing to go and grow and change yourself. And I think when you're working in family business, it hits you in the face so much more because, again, the person sees every side of you. And again, with our relationship too, especially like father-daughter, like you get to see me in all sorts of interactions and circles. And, like when there's personal stuff going on in my life and I'm, down and my, energy level is down, like you're going to be able to pick that out way quicker because intimately what's going on in the details of it, right?
Yeah.
And so, you have that all going on, but you still have a business to run. Like we still have our goals. We have the things that we've set out to do. And like, for me, I'm really goal driven and I'm really success driven in a lot of ways. And like, if I said I'm going to do something, I want to do it. And so I think it's just this interesting tug of like, everything and yet you still have this business that you're running. And it's like, in my opinion too, one of the benefits is you're more invested in the business and your family.
Yeah.
And I mean, that can be true and that can also not be true because I've heard stories of people like, well, screw it. Like, I'm just going to leave.
Yeah.
But in our case, like I am deeply invested in this business because you've started the company in some ways that I wouldn't be working at a different company.
Well, and then I think if we go back to whatever year it was, 2018 or 17, when you were doing some part-time work and things like that, at that point in your life, you were still in high school. You didn't really know what you wanted to do. And those were some of the toughest years of my life, both personally and professionally as an adult. I think it was 42, had a head injury when I was 42. And so from 2017 to about 20 was a really challenging time in my life as I worked through rehabbing from that head injury and a lot of stuff spewing out, right? That wasn't necessarily helpful, as well as I'd never had teenager kids, and I think we had, by the time you were 19, I think we had 6 teenagers at one point.
Yeah, there was like 5 or 6
right before
teenagers.
you turned 20, and then maybe it was Shiloh.
Yeah.
No, Lily turned 13.
Yeah, you're right. And then for me at the time, right, like I'm graduating high school, my husband Luke and I got married in 2020. So there's just a lot of transition happening in my life. And like you said, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think that whole thought we could go down because I think the whole idea of you got to know what you want to do is it's hard for kids, right? Like, and it puts a lot of pressure on things, but I was feeling a lot of that pressure at the time.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, you didn't know exactly what you want to do. And you're like, I don't know if I want to work in this business. And we were a family business, and then we had family partnerships. And I think that's even another level of discussion, and how deep we could go on this topic, probably pretty deep, but partnerships are can be a very beneficial thing. And they can also have, they do have tons of challenges because, when you first start the business, you you have expectations, but you really don't know what it's like to work with somebody in business together until you are
Until
in
you
business
do.
together, you know.
Yeah.
And
And you had a partnership with your brother.
yeah,
And it was a 50-50 partnership.
yeah,
And so I think that's another level too of challenge when you have somebody that you're in a 50-50 partnership with.
yeah, yeah. And we have a long storied history, lots of challenges, lots of trauma, you
Yeah.
know, even to, you know, where blended family is he's, you know, 12 years older than me and has, you know, had his own, you know, dad prior to my mom and dad marrying. And then we had the trauma of my parents being murdered, and he stepped in, was a parent figure in my life. And that was really challenging times for him and very, you know, hard times for me. And, you know, then I had this life transformation at 20, and like, you know, all things are new in my mind. And I mean, I've got a body of work that I just have not processed, and I'm getting to do that now in my later years. But getting into business and some of the reasons why we get into business, and I see this I saw this with my partnership, and I see it with a lot of partnerships, especially ones that don't end up working well, is that when you start it and you're at $0 and you're both just eager to work and go out and sell jobs, that's one thing. But then when you get to $1 million, you get to $2 million, and the thing starts getting more complex. Then it's like, who plays what role? You know, who's
Yeah.
the visionary? Who's the integrator? Who's the director of sales and marketing? And then do you have the skill set at 2 million? You might have it at 2 million, but you do have it at 4 million. You might not have it at 4 million. At 10 million, you know, you may not have the skill set to fill that role on the accountability chart. So at 2 million, you could do it, but we're growing to 4 million. And then let's say that partner doesn't have the skill set to fulfill that role. Well, now, you know, are they going to want to be replaced by somebody else in the company?
No.
And that's basically what happened in our company, was that it grew to a place where, you know, right person, right seat for the kind of company. And I'm not saying that, you know, my brother, Chris, couldn't have, you know, played a part in the business, but as the business grew, being the director of design and production, you know, was not a seat that he could fill at that point, or at least we agreed that it wasn't a good fit.
And the vision of the company too. I mean, like, you are very growth driven, right? And so I think you were like, all right, keep growing, keep growing, keep growing. And he had a different vision for the business. And so I think that's really challenging when you've got two different visions, and how do you work those out, and it's
Yeah.
50-50. And so,
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things too, is that partners bring very different skill sets to the table, and when those skill sets don't match up well, then that's and they might have matched up well at one point. And in my case, I would say that, like, you know, it was difficult being in business, and I think Chris would probably say the same thing. Is that it was difficult being in business together. I mean, I had all of my stuff, he had all of his stuff. We came from a really hard place and challenging background.
I mean,
And
the fact that you two even made it to be able to be in business together with your guys' lives is just, bizarre.
yeah, it's miraculous. You know, it really is.
Yeah.
What you know, two different lives, two different stories. You know, a lot of stuff. But now you get into business, and now you're in a 50-50 partnership, and you're building something together. And when you have two people with two different ideas, or, you know, I got all of my trauma and he's got all of his trauma, and when you put those two traumas together, or as we've even learned, you know, in the more recent years, even just like our print profiles. I mean, you have certain type of Colby types that aren't going to do well together, and then or I shouldn't say not do well together, they can just naturally, personality-wise, can just really challenge each other. Mm-hmm. So when you have somebody that will naturally trigger you, we on the print report, we call about the trigger report.
Yeah.
You and I tend to work really well together as far as how we think about things,
Yeah,
how
we
we
have
do
some of the
things.
similar best self and some of the similar triggers, but that can also be a little bit of a rub as well.
And you're and at the same token, you're also not a 50-50 partner.
Yes.
So there's some dynamics there on the business side. So I think of it like wearing hats. So when I show up and I'm working in the business, I'm not really wearing the owner's hat, but outside of the business, when we're taking risks and we're meeting with the attorney and the accountant,
Making strategic decisions.
Yeah.
Like you're wearing your owner hat.
Hiring, Well, if the structure is set up the way the structure is set up and there's accountability, meaning you have a visionary, an integrator, or what you maybe say like a president or something like that. And then you have the director of sales and marketing. Like, what happens when I don't fit one of those seats and he doesn't fit one of those seats or she doesn't fit one of those seats in a partnership, with where you're going, not with where it's at today, but with where you're going. And then you're in this stalemate because, you got the owner's hats and you can just basically kind of trump
Right.
the direction of the company.
As you're talking, I'm like, we need to do a whole podcast on partnerships because I think you have a lot of insights into that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Be a whole nother episode.
Lived through a couple of different
partnerships.
partnerships. And, again, like, I think they're very beautiful. Here's what I would say as I'm sitting on this side of a couple different partnerships that I was involved in, is that I have my own baggage that I bring to the table, and being in business brings out a lot of your shadow. And it also brings out a lot of the beauty, but when you get into a partnership and, it's family driven, it has a lot of emotion attached to it. Like, that can make things confusing. And probably the biggest violation that I've done to myself and to others has been boundaries, like having clear boundaries. And when you're starting off 20 years ago, like, just even knowing what my boundaries were, knowing that there was things that person triggered me, because of childhood trauma and childhood challenges and all the things that I bring to the table, like, it just adds another level of complexity to the business.
So narrowing back in on the family dynamics, right? Like, let's talk through some of the things that we've set up in our relationship specifically to really have a healthy relationship. Because I'm imagining some people listening to this, I mean, they might be in a family business situation. So, we talked about a lot of the challenges. We've talked about some specific scenarios. Like, let's talk about what we do to maintain a healthy relationship. You say a few, and then I'll say a few, and we'll kind of discuss.
Yeah, I think first and foremost is having clear seats, in the company.
Yes.
So, and then those seats are evolving though as we're growing, and we've grown a lot over the last 3 years. So they keep getting blurred, but we have to go back to be obsessing over the accountability chart. The accountability chart is really the tool that's like not helps us, it guides us. It guides us to a strong relationship. It guides us to strong leadership and strong team below. So one of the things I love, I was talking to Dave about this, and it's like, if I was to, like,
Your business coach, by the way,
kind of imagine coming, like, being up, you can kind of, like, the cool thing about being a human being is that you can, like, actually think about what it looks like to look down at yourself, and, like, so sometimes I think about our accountability chart. Some people think of it as an org chart. It's not an org chart because it has the 5 roles, and everybody, it's not just I'm the visionary. It's like, I'm the visionary, and here's the 5 things that I need to do role wise, accomplish to be that visionary. I need to, be the face of the company. I need to close big deals. I need to bring, stuff to the table, and culture and R&D, Those are things that I naturally do, that I love to do, that bring me energy. Closing big deals allows me to work with the sales team, but I don't necessarily have to be the director of sales and marketing, because the director of sales and marketing is,
I've got a different set of roles that I'm accountable to.
Yep. And as the company grows, those might change, or and so things are fast moving in a small business. And so staying up on top of that stuff requires having an integrator in the place, and even where we're at now, like, I'm sitting in both the visionary and the integrator seat of our company. And there's definitely things that, as we're growing, that we know that, like, I've delegated a lot out to our team. But there's probably still there are bottlenecks that I create because I'm not fully GWCing that seat, get it, want it, have the capacity to do it, because I'm out doing visionary stuff. I mean, basically to just kind of wrap that up, like, we have a structure in place. I would say, but underneath that, like when we posted the role, you applied for the role. It wasn't like you got the role because you're Isabelle. And I probably one of my favorite stories is the first time that we were in the office and somebody came in and you introduced them or me. I can't remember how you did it, but it was a great boundary. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. I was like, and this is Michael, our owner.
Yeah. And I thought, Michael,
Yeah, who are you
I'm
calling
your dad,
Michael?
But just that professionalism that you brought to the table. And then also like, you didn't want to be just given the job. Like you wanted to earn the job. You wanted to have you didn't want to be here because you were my daughter, and people definitely know that that's not the case at this point. But at some points when you're early in your career, and another thing is we're a construction industry, and most construction companies are male. It's a male dominated industry, and there's not a lot of women. I will proudly say that we have almost 40% of our staff is female, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm really proud to be on that team because I think that, especially in the remodeling business, the female perspective, the relationship perspective of remodeling a home is super valuable. And I think 70% of home decisions, are made by females. So it makes sense that, and most of those are in overhead or in design or in marketing. We don't have a lot of female yet in the field swinging the hammer.
We're working towards that.
Soon to come.
Well, and I would just add to what you said. So you've said so far, like roles, clear defined roles, having that accountability chart is important. You just mentioned one of like how I would label is equal business stature. So in that moment when I introduced you back in the day, this is Michael, our owner, really what I was kind of creating in myself was just a little bit more of equal business stature, right? Like I'm Isabelle in the business. I've got this role that I'm in. You're Michael. You got the role that you're in. To this day, like it's something that, I think is shaped. Obviously, you and I are sitting here on a podcast and I introduce you as Michael Flory, founder, CEO, and my dad, and we do this TV show together and we lean a little bit more into our father-daughter relationship. Like that never goes away. Like you are always my dad. I'm always going to be your daughter. But I do think, in business, it's helpful to call each other by your first names. Yeah. Most of the time, all the time that you're interacting, especially in the business. Yeah. For me, that's been like huge. And it's just a little thing, but that's really helped create equal business stature. Yeah. So that's like a practical thing that somebody could do is call each other by your first names.
Yeah. And I would say another really important thing, and I think this isn't just for family, but one of the things that I've started to do really intentionally over the last few years is we meet outside of the work day.
I knew you were going to say that one.
1 month, once a month.
Because I've tried to cancel on him a few times. And he's like, hey, this is the most important meeting.
And really, as a leader, it's a chance for me to get with the leaders that I'm leading and find out what's going on in their life personally, And when I first started doing it, it was a little bit like, I didn't when
clunky. You're kind of like, what's this about?
It wasn't necessarily clunky, but it's like, is this work or is this personal? Is this, and it's like, you know what? It's both. It's personal and work. What do you want to talk about today? What's going on? What's stirring? Where can I, what can I learn about you? What can I learn about what's going on in your life? And that kind of stuff is so critical. And when you're in the trenches with somebody in a business, working, dealing with challenges, problems, any business out there that stuff's happening, So getting outside of that and going and having a meal together, eating together, and just looking at each other across the table and just connecting. Like, to me, that's been one of the big game changers. And then like just being able to not carry the baggage from interaction to interaction. And, if you have a lot of that baggage in a relationship, if you're working with a spouse or you're working with somebody else, that's just additional stuff that's brought to the table. And I think one of the things that you and I have done real well is we're able to kind of have disagreements, come head to head, and then like move on with each other. Like, not
go through
necessarily, not
a
necessarily I'm
pretty-
sorry, because a lot of times it's just, it's the way it happened, right?
Yep.
It's, I'm not big on necessarily apologies, because, if you did something that missed the mark, it's like, oh, just missed the mark, like, and you know what, we got to learn from that. Or if there's something that I did that I missed the mark, it's like, I missed the mark. I don't have to necessarily apologize all the time, as much as it is, I want to change, and you're the mirror for me.
Yeah.
So if I've done something that hurt you, or, wasn't in my best self behavior, like, I'm aware of that. And if you can help me be aware of that, like, that becomes a beautiful mirror, and then we get to change and grow together.
Yeah, and to add to what you said about the monthly connects, I think for me, when we started doing it, one of the rubs was I'm really efficiency driven. So I'm like, okay, let's get it done. Let's move on to the next thing. It just is part of how I'm wired, and it's part of how you're wired too. But for me, those meetings were hard, because it was like, okay, like, you already kind of know everything that's going on in my life. Like, why do we need to talk about it again?
Yeah.
Like, you already know, right? But the reality is like, you might not know, actually.
Right.
And you might not be fully aware of, like, yeah, you know the situation, but you don't necessarily know how I'm feeling about it, or what I'm processing or learning through it. And so, like, I have found those times now, kind of we've been doing it for a year and a half now.
Yeah, probably
really
year and a half.
intentionally, where it's actually been one of the biggest things that helps us just realign and reconnect.
Right.
And when you're in family business, that is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, just letting things go. So I think that's the other tactical thing, is like, you can hold people to everything that they say, or you can be like, hey, I'm a human, you're a human.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to say stuff we don't mean. We're going to do things that, like, we want to do differently next time.
Yeah.
And if you could just give more grace to each other, and more, like, freedom of, like, it's challenging to work with your family, and it's one of the most rewarding things that I've ever chosen to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful that we get to work in this business together. Like, it's part of what makes me wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. and I'm just excited to do life and to be in this business with you.